Hello everyone, I'm John Bussard. I'm an HP Solution Center engineer for Ingram Micro. I help support servers, blade system storage, as well as networking technology solutions from HP. In this series, we're going to explore 3Par StoreServ solutions, and what I plan on doing is showing you a slide from a popular PowerPoint that you might see out there, and then I'm going to demonstrate what that means inside the 3Par management console. So with that being said, let's begin. Today we're going to talk about 3Par StoreServ's thin provisioning technologies, and they definitely have the leadership and the advantage as far as their thin technologies are concerned. So this is the slide that you'll see, so let's kind of talk through this a little bit. So first off, start thin. So one of the nice things about 3Par StoreServ thin provisioning technologies is the fact that it doesn't have a performance impact on your infrastructure. A lot of people don't like to use thin provisioning technologies because it definitely does add an extra layer of performance issues that could happen within an environment. And a lot of people don't even like to use thin provision volumes because of that. And this is mainly because a lot of other storage vendors out there use software as a way of providing thin provisioning within the infrastructure. With 3Par StoreServ, they actually have a special designed ASIC that's on each one of the controllers that does a bunch of things, but one of the things it's responsible for is something called zero detect. And what it does is actually, if your data is coming into the environment, if it detects there's a stream of zeros that are coming through, and trust me, your data, as you copy it into the environment, there are definitely streams of zeros that are coming along. It can detect those and drop those out of the stream, and just write placeholders on the back, so it kind of doesn't take up as much space on the back end storage. Also, it has the ability to detect if there's been deletions done on the back. So if a file has been deleted or a volume has been deleted on the back end, it can actually recapture that storage space and provide that to other resources in the environment. All right, so start thin. So certainly I could create a 100 gig volume, and if the operating system and the data on that only take up about 20 gigs, only 20 gigs are going to get used on the back end. So that's a good thing. Even though we could over provision our infrastructure, it's a good thing because a lot of us tend to over provision our infrastructures anyways. We don't ever want to fill up a volume to the tune of, and I've seen different numbers on this. I think the most radical number I've seen out there is we tend to over provision our infrastructure by 80%. But even if that was a smaller number, we still have a lot of storage that's not getting utilized just because we're afraid of filling up our volume. So thin provisioning is good. It allows us to present larger volumes in the environment, buy the storage that we need today at today's prices, and the storage that we need tomorrow at tomorrow's prices. All right, so again, thin provisioning technology, data as well as the operating system take up 20 gigs. On the front end, only 20 gigs, back end only 20 gigs of storage, even though it thinks it has 100 gigs. Actually, with 3Par's solution and that ASIC and that zero detect, it'll actually be smaller than 20 gigs because there's certainly going to be some contiguous spaces of zeros that do exist. But the difference becomes when we start talking about, beyond performance, the difference becomes when we start talking about staying thin within the environment. So with that environment, we'll say that our data grows another 10 gigs. So our volume moves from 20 gigs up to 30 gigs in the environment. So everybody's thin provisioning technology, so certainly on the back end, 30 gigs of storage will be used. But the problem comes is, we'll say we delete that extra 10 gigs of data in the environment. So our volume actually goes from 20 gigs to 30 gigs back to 20 gigs. With other thin provisioning solutions based on software, it kind of captures that additional storage, meaning the volume stays at 30 gigs used on the back-end storage, except for 3Par. Because of its zero detect and that ASIC, it actually can detect when that data has been removed in the environment and actually recapture that back. So the volume on the back-end storage goes from 20 gigs to 30 gigs back to 20 gigs. So this is a good thing when we look at large volumes that are out there today, and certainly maybe something like volumes that are being presented to VMware. Now we have things like storage vMotion, where we can move these virtual machine files around between different storage lanes. So we have the ability to really fatten up thinly provisioned volumes pretty quickly within the environment, unless you're using 3Par, and they can detect that movement and actually recapture back that data. So start thin, stay thin. Where they get thin from is from a couple things. Is they're saying that if you convert from anybody else's thin provisioning technology into a 3-par thin provisioning technology that you can actually save up to 50% of your storage costs. Right? A lot of people, because of this fattening up of thin provisioning volumes that happens within an infrastructure, as well as people don't thin a lot of things because there is a performance impact on other solutions that are out there. So there's no performance impact with the HP 3-par solution, and as well as we got a greater utilization to be able to grab back that storage if it's not being used anymore. All right, so that's the slide. So let's actually explore this out within the interface. All right, so this is the 3-par management console. I kind of gave a brief overview of the management console in the chunklets and CPGs video. So if you want to get an overview of the console, you may want to go back and review that. But with that being said, let's kind of create a virtual volume. So I'm going to right click, create a virtual volume. Let's move this up a little bit. We'll give it a name. We're certainly going to use thin provisioning technology. I'm going to give it a small size, maybe just 6 gigs. And we're going to select our CPG or our policy for placing this data within the environment. Something else I'm going to put a check mark in is the advanced options, because there's something I want to show you. All right, and that's this, zero detect. So this actually turns on that ASIC to be able to detect if there's, when storage comes in, when data comes into the storage solution, if there's, streams of zeros that are happening, it can drop those and not write those on the back end. It can also detect if the deletions happen on the back end. So that's there. It's automatically checked by default. It's left enabled. I don't see really a reason why somebody would want to disable that, but I just thought I'd let you know and show you that in there. And it doesn't show up unless you select the advanced options. So let's move forward. We'll finish creating this volume. It's down here. Let's export it to a system. We're going to select this volume, and we're going to use the same system that we used in the other videos. Next, and finish. Now I'm going to do 2 videos on thin provisioning technologies. One is going to be for Windows 2008 R2 and older operating systems. I'm going to do another one for Windows Server 2012. They have a little bit different way of reacting with thin provision volumes. So maybe if you have a mixed environment, you may want to view both of the videos that are out there. So we've exported that volume to this system here. So let's go through and let's rescan the disks and see. Bring that volume online. Nope, didn't show up yet. Let's try it again. Yep, there it is. Alright, so we're going to make that volume online. We're going to initialize it. And then we're going to format it. So new simple volume. Blast through all that. And it should be created in a moment or two here. Alright, so while that's there it is. So while that's formatting, what I'm going to do is show you a couple utilities that I have out there. So I have this utility here, which does a graphical representation of what's being used on the back end. So let me log into the system. And I'm going to expand out the storage solution, and here's that volume in particular. Alright, I'm going to start monitoring that volume. We can actually see that right now it's using 33 megs of space. So where does that come from? That these numbers coming from? If we go inside the console and I do a show virtual volume dash storage and do enter, we can see there's our volume, and there's the actual 33 megs, and that's showing up under the used column. Okay, so we're going to monitor how the storage solution actually uses the storage on the back end. So let's go over here. I'm going to minimize that right now. And I'm going to open up our new volume here. Nice clean volume. We're going to start putting some files on this volume. So I have a couple large files that I want to place on this volume. So I have a 2 gig file, which is random data, as well as a 3 gig file, which is just a steady stream of 0. So we're going to take both of these and see how it reacts within the environment. So first I'm going to copy this guy. Go over to our new volume. and we're going to place that down. And very quickly, you can see our transfer rate was pretty incredible. Let's go back in and look what's happening on the storage. So certainly the cache is starting to drop the data off into the storage solution, and we're starting to consume storage in the back end. All right, and we'll go back over here into here just to see. You can see that we're growing inside the command line as well. All right, it's going to continue to grow. It's going to empty out the cache into the disks. So remember, this file is certainly random data, but it certainly has continuous spaces of zeros that do exist, and that ASIC is actually going to reach in there and remove those and not write those on the back end. We've kind of smoothed off now. You can see that even though it was a 2 gig file, we're only using about a gig and what, a fifth of a gig to be able to, on the back end as storage. So let's go back over to our interface, and this time let's take this 3 gig file. Remember, this 3 gig file is just a straight stream of zeros. So we'll take that and we'll drop that on this volume as well. You notice as that copies, and again it copies very fast, on the back end we're not consuming any additional storage. It's kind of stayed solid at this gig and a quarter, I guess I would say. All right. And if we look inside the CLI, you can see that's where we're staying at. All right. And so 3Par has more effective way of using the storage within the environment. And if we look at the D drive itself, even though we have 6 gigs provisioned in the environment, it looks like the volume's almost completely filled. We only got about a gig free. On the back end storage, we're using just slightly over a gig. All right. So the reason why I have 2 videos is because 2008 R2 and older have a different way of kind of capturing back the storage space if deletion's been happening. It's kind of an automatic thing that happens with 2012, but in 2008 and older, we kind of need to run a utility to be able to recapture back that data. Because if I go inside this volume and I just delete these files, what really happens? I just delete the pointers to the files, but the data actually still exists on the back end. And as you guys probably know, you could probably go find some free utility out there and recapture these, reanimate these files if you wanted to in the environment. So you need something that kind of cleans and zeroes out the file system. And there is a utility for that. It's a free utility. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this. So what this batch file does, I'm going to run this in a little bit. It goes through and it quietly deletes everything on the D drive. I didn't have to delete everything on the D drive. I just chose to do that. If you had random files that existed on there and you were not deleting them, you could certainly run this utility and still zero out the file system. Right? So the utility I run is something called sdelete. It's a free utility from Systernals. It's a company that Microsoft owns now. But sdelete or secure delete will go through it and clean the file system as well as zero it out. All right, so with that being said, let's run this utility. See, my files have been deleted. And we're going through the process. In a little bit, we should see the 3Par storage system start to recapture back the space. And there it's happening right there. We're starting to recapture back the space. So this is something that doesn't happen in other storage vendor solutions. If this deletion happened, and even if we did a secure delete, the data being used on the back end would stay solid. Right? And we could go back and look inside the CLI and just verify that this is happening as well. Right. We'll let this complete its process. Right, you can see we've kind of leveled out. They're using less than 100 megs, a little less than 100 megs. We're almost finished here. Right. So as this finishes, when we look at 2012, the way 3Par interacts with the 2012 system, you actually don't need to run something like this. It actually automatically happens, and that's again why I created that video. So the process is finished. Again, we're about 100 megs used on the back end. So, administrators may run this utility, maybe on the weekend or during some slow time in the environment to recapture back the space. I've run into some administrators who have been storage constrained and then came back and run this delete command to kind of capture back what's not being used on the back end, so they can kind of keep going for a little bit longer. So that's the end of this presentation for you today. Stay tuned, or I'd certainly go back and go explore the same solution as far as the Windows 2012 server.